Okay, good morning, everybody. So I'm Anssi Paalanen, and me and my colleagues, Boas and Michael back there, will tell you about what we are doing in recycling in Fortum. Our presentation will be, just for a variety, be slightly technical, so we give it kind of a different kind of perspective. And to just correct, we are not just trying to save the world. So just to remind you what kind of company Fortum is, traditionally known for electricity and heat. We are Finnish-based, but working in all Nordic countries except Iceland, in Baltic countries, Poland, Russia, India mainly. Bit less than 10,000 people, and very strong focus on sustainability and really creating a better, cleaner world. Quite recently, meaning 2016, we acquired Finnish or then Nordic company Ecochem, which was then focusing mainly on hazardous waste. But after that acquisition, we have been focusing more and more on recycling as well. And that's kind of a reason why we are here and why Fortum and recycling really do connect. Our recycling efforts are based currently mainly on Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. And over to you, Boss.
Yeah. So when Fortum is jumping into recycling, they need to start some certain recycling streams. So they picked up the metal recycling as first, which I will present to you here, and the business of Fincomet Oy, which Fortum bought in the end of last year. And I was actually thinking if I would bring up a small story from a smaller perspective of building up a business and tell about Fincomet a little bit as a metal recycling company. It was founded in 1992 by Jouni Järvensivu, who figured that taking in the metals and start trading it locally was very interesting, and that grew very quickly. And so when the volume started growing, he started contacting his son and saying like, hey, now we have a lot of stuff, so what do we do? And the son basically took his dad's credit card and said, I got this. And then he went flying around the world, and probably with Finnair, and of course. And then he established a more better trade, since the demand for the metals in Finland was starting to be a little bit low at that point. So we needed to trade the material elsewhere around the world. So his son took care of that and took the business even further. And when that started to be very successful, and we were thinking about here that when it comes to the environment of recycling, I'll take a little pause here in the story and saying that when it comes to recycling of the metals and everything, it's the most important thing we can do at the moment. Recycling is our, let's say, totem pole of our fundamental society, because we cannot use raw material forever. With that said, to be able to get the recyclable materials more in and the materials flowing more and more, we need to have a service. And when Fincomet thought about that, we need something to get a little bit more, and there was one person who said, okay, what do I do? How do we create a better service? And he was like, well, I don't know. How about you go to the customers? So he decided to walk to the customers, knock on the door, ask, what do you want? How do you want things to work? And with that, listening to the customers, coming back and saying, hey, we need to do this. And then customers would like to have our services if we can make it work in that way. And the customer was very happy. And within a couple of years, the volume's grown with 300%, only because we listened to the customer. And that's something extremely important. Now today, when Fincomet has become a part of Fortum, the game is very big. And with that, we would like to be humble and not maybe think that we can conquer the world ourselves. So we have now mashed up with a great group of people from Digitalists to work on more in depth of services and getting to expand ourselves a little bit more. But when it comes to the metal recycling of Fincomet, it goes very much hand in hand, as I said, for the first recycling stream of Fortum, which is recycling the metals and which leads then further on to the batteries, which is also part of metals. Mika Saulny.
All right. Thanks, Boas. Let's go forward. All right. Lithium-ion batteries. I'm quite curious to know how many of you have electric car? There, I see a couple of those. How many of you have plug-in hybrid car? All right, even more hands. Cool. So, the whole life cycle of lithium-ion batteries. First, why Fortum is curious and interested in recycling, receiving, and operating lithium-ion batteries. It goes to the first life of new batteries, for example, in electric vehicles, but most importantly, as Fortum is moving forward with electrification, and we are modernizing the whole energy sector with more renewable energies, meaning wind, solar. All right. Okay, think about wind and solar, especially in Finland. So we look outside. It's sometimes sunny, but not so often. Okay, we have wind, awesome, but not always. All right, it's sun, lots of wind. We have lots of energy to the grid. Awesome. Okay, so what about those times that is not that suitable for this purpose? Okay, how about let's attach huge energy stores next to these renewable energies. Okay, so then we can balance the grid really sophisticatedly, and we know exactly how much we can put the energy inside the huge, I'm talking about huge batteries. And at the same time, we can move forward with more renewable energies and change the world to be more CO2 efficient. Okay, now Fortum has lots of huge batteries. What happens next? It's not just that okay, we operate them and that's it. Let's leave it to somebody else. Somebody else can take control of it. No. We move to the second life. All right. So let's move back to the electric vehicles. As car manufacturers think that when your electric car or plug-in hybrid, when it has like 70-80% of the remaining capacity, car manufacturers think that it's end of life, garbage. You have to change the batteries to it. Okay, so now let's think about it. Okay, 70% of the remaining capacity, and then they think that it's to recycling. Okay, it doesn't make sense to us either, so that's why we have the second life concept. And that means that we are taking these batteries from electric vehicles and building something cool like mobile storing systems. And we have this pilot going on in India. It's really exciting. We have some excellent results about that, how to make like swapping batteries, how to make this kind of small storing units to places where normally it's quite hard to get the grid energy in there. All right. In second life, okay, batteries used, we reach to something like 30% of the capacity. What happens next? Let's move to the recycling. And that's why the old EcoChem, nowadays Fortum Recycling Waste Solutions, we have a long history of treating hazardous material. Okay. Electric vehicles, their lithium-ion batteries, they have a sort of bad reputation about their stability and their kind of like flammability, let's say it like that. So luckily, old EcoChem, nowadays Fortum Recycling Waste Solutions, they have really good capability and knowledge from the history how to treat lithium-ion batteries properly, how to transport and how to treat the logistics, storing, safety, everything. Okay, we get the batteries, we get it to our site, Then we have the actual recycling process. I have the next slide, I will go more in depth about that. But we treat the batteries safely in local markets. We are not interested to send stuff some shady places. No, because that's also the message we are getting from customers. We want to treat them safely in our local markets. Cooperation with battery chemical manufacturers. So we get these fractions from lithium-ion batteries, and we send them back to the battery chemical manufacturers, also locally. So those battery chemical manufacturers, then they treat and make new batteries for our electric vehicles and to support our change to the more CO2-friendly energy system. But let's talk a bit more about the actual recycling, what we are doing at Fortum. So, we get the batteries. First things first, how to make them safe. As you know, like electric vehicles, they may have huge voltage inside, like 400 volts or something like that. You cannot just put them to a crusher, it will just flame, explosion, really nice fire show, but still, that's not something we are looking forward. So, discharging of the battery. So let's drain it, and then excess energy back to the grid, or other solutions that we are currently looking into. So it's not just that we take the energy and toss it out on the air, or our purpose is to also use that energy in a smart way. Then, because like, I don't know if you know about electric cars and their batteries, but some of the models, they have the whole floor of the car is basically the batteries. Okay, so how you handle battery system like that? You cannot, you need a huge crusher to put it inside. That's why we are dismantling these to smaller modules and cells and recognizing which chemistry, which models we are treating. That's why we can use the more sophisticated treatment later on. Okay, we have battery models, they're safe, discharge, excellent. Then mechanical recycling. That involves like crushing and different type of separations so that we can get different metals and plastics, organics out of it. Then we have this we call black mass. That's a cathode material. That's the material that if you're following news about lithium-ion batteries and the technology related, that's the big fuss. The black mass, the cathode material. There we have the cobalt, lithium, nickel, all these really interesting and rare metals that we need to start treating locally. So it's not enough that we just bring cobalt from Congo or something like that and be happy about it. No, we need to be sustainable in a smart way to recycle these metals and keep them locally here. Let's not ship it to somewhere shady places. Let's treat it here. That's why we have a cooperation with Chrysoltech, and they have hydrometallurgic process to treat the black mass that we receive. It's located in Harjavalta, and there, after their process, we get this in a nice format, really clean, efficient process, and then we can feed it locally back to the battery manufacturers. So that's basically it. And as we are talking also about customer experience, that's also like to most customers, they have no idea what's going on in the recycling. It's just, you just put it somewhere and magically something happens, it disappears, and then you're happy about it. But nowadays, like customers, it's not enough. It needs to be transparent, it needs to be visible, and somehow show customers that we are doing it properly and neatly, and we are taking responsibility how to do it. So I guess that's basically it. Let's bring another guy on the stage.
Okay, one additional fraction that we are looking into. Like metals, we are very been involved for a long time. Batteries we have just been launched, and then we are talking about or waste electronics and electric equipment recycling that we are currently looking into. We are not doing it quite yet, but we are looking into if there's anything that we could do. And then for that reason, I decided to take a slightly different perspective here and try to answer the big why question. Why bother? I mean, recycling in general, it's nasty, hard, dirty work, requires a lot of manual work. It's usually much more costly than just using virgin material. And to put it bluntly, in many cases, we are just running out of our natural resources, and we are more or less running out of the globe. So it's not a question of should we recycle, it's just it's something that we really have to do. So a big question, a big fundamental question that we have to solve in more or less all recycling fractions, and actually we have to solve it pretty fast. Here, these things are true in more or less all recycling fractions, but they are especially true in e-waste or waste electronics. So as we are building new waste electronics like laptops or LED lamps or vacuum cleaners or whatnot, and then throwing them away, we are actually wasting a huge amount of precious resources, base metals like iron or copper, or precious metals like gold or palladium or so on. We are throwing lots of recyclable plastics, and to be honest, current recycling and waste management practices, especially outside Europe, are not really helping the situation. So globally, we are really wasting each year 55 billion euros in raw material value, in tons that, to be honest, I can't remember the figure, but for this huge amount of wasted laptops and dishwashers and whatnot, which is just dumped away. So this is really something that we have to do. And of course, as we are moving from this kind of a once-through business cycle where you build something, use something and throw it away, to a truly recycle or circular business model, we really need to rethink the whole business. And then it's suddenly it's a completely different business from our point of view, from our customers' point of view, and anybody and everybody in that value chain or value circle has to rethink their business. And we need to actually answer completely different questions to our customers. Like Boas mentioned in Fincomet case, where we went to a customer and how you want your metal recycling to happen. It's not about things about how much it costs and so on. It's more fundamental things like how easy it will be, how material will be tracked. More and more customers really want to know what happens to their equipment, whether it's plastics, metals, laptops, whatnot, when they are delivered to whomever is taking care of their waste and recycling. And Michael already mentioned these shady places, especially in electronics and electric equipment. There's lots of these kind of shady places where equipment will end in the end of the day, or some fractions like plastics. And that's something that we are looking into, if we can tackle and really create something that we can ensure our customers that you can be safe, you can trust that whenever we recycle stuff, it's handled in a sustainable way from environmental, from ethical point of view. And then we get to summary. So just want to emphasize that when we get to recycling, it's not an option. I mean, it's actually a big fundamental question like getting energy production CO2 free. That's something that just have to happen, and pretty soon. And actually those two things work quite nicely hand in hand, because recycling in general requires a lot of energy, especially electricity. So if you want to be efficient recycling, you also need to have lots of clean electricity energy production. And like we all mentioned, business as usual is not option anymore. We have to rethink waste management. We have to rethink recycling very strongly, so that or used material, whether it's circuit boards or whether it's plastic bags or car batteries or whatnot, will enter into production as whole or as in raw materials. And this, of course, like said, requires completely different thinking. We really need to think more about customer. What is actually really important for our customer, our customer's customer, so to speak. This old kind of utility business model, one-straw model, where we wait at the gate that somebody delivers us the stuff, or we produce electricity or so on, just won't work in the future. So we really need to collaborate with our potential customers and think what is really important for them. And more, it's about sustainability to really make a better future, not about optimizing costs. Of course, the cost element is always there, but it's more and more secondary from our point of view. And another thing, we have shown you today 3 different recycling streams: batteries, metals, and waste electronics. And they are seemingly different, but they do intertwine very strongly, like more or less every material or recycling fraction. So more advanced you get in recycling, more intertwined your recycling network will get. So for example, actually laptops is a very good example. You get plastic, you get chipboards, you get base metals, you get maybe even some glass, some gold and so on. So okay, my bad. So just so just one single solution won't be enough. We really need to build a intertwined recycling network solution that will tackle the whole recycling problem that we are facing. And obviously we are not going to do it alone. There's going to be a lot of different operators, a lot of different actors. And then from our point of view, we are just making the transition, making the first steps. We are currently in, I would say, the most straightforward fractions, but we are strongly moving towards more difficult ones. And in that, I'd like to conclude our presentation.
Thank you. Let's give the 3 Musketeers a warm hand. It's actually very nice to hear, and with your ending notes, that CX innovation is then connected with themes like sustainability, which is a huge area to be looked into. Huge opportunities, as you explained here as well. So definitely not a thing for collecting butterflies. There's a real business, and it can be done in a sustainable way. What I was also impressed is that very kind of this business that you guys run is very heavy kind of B2B focused, but how kind of intently you listen to your customers and involve them in this process of making the business live and breed. Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like to ask a hard question. So going back through the presentation of all of you, you said the proof of concept of currently is going on in India, and you said there is a lot of manual labor involved in the metal recycling. So, and I want to go back and jump back to the beginning of this breakfast seminar was when we talked about customer experience and employee experience together. So what about the ethics of metal recycling in countries that are outside the first world, for example? And you're talking about sustainability and you're talking about, well, ethics. So how is this connected to the whole concept? I said hard question.
Not really. Actually, kind of pre-ordered question. Sounds like more. Yes, I do agree. In many recycling, there's a lot of these kind of black areas, a lot of very don't ask, don't tell situation. And that's definitely something that we are looking into, and we want to build from the beginning our business to sound base so that we really we're extremely transparent. We are sustainable from any meaning of that word, whether it's environmental or ethical. So that's definitely something that we will focus on.
I saw there was another question. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. Today, as a consumer, I can choose different electricity providers, and I can choose like Fortum or another one. Will it happen the same for waste recycling? Will one day be able to choose Fortum as my electronic recycle operator or not? Like what it will mean for consumer in near future?
Well, consumer and business recycling is handled by different legislation. So to your question, I can only say that maybe, but in current situation all over the European Union, consumer electronics, for example, their collection is handled by extended producer responsibility schemes, meaning that you can go to, let's say, to Gigantti and return your laptops or phones free, and that's kind of a different setup that we are currently working on.
Thank you. I think it's 11 o'clock on the dot. So thank you, everyone, all speakers, for your presentations, your thoughts and ideas. I think personally it was a very insightful day to hear how companies are actually walking the dog with the CX innovation. And it's great to see that the ambition is there to be disrupting, creating long-lasting performance, saving the planet, making the employees feel good. All of this good stuff that is required to deliver the ultimate CX innovation. Thank you all.